The canvas and the closet were never more connected than in 19th century Europe, where painters literally dressed society. When Romanticism swept through art studios in the 1820s, women's fashion transformed overnight. The simple columnar neoclassical silhouette gave way to dramatic gigot sleeves inspired by Renaissance paintings. Waistlines dropped to their natural position, and skirts ballooned into bell shapes that echoed the emotional grandeur of Delacroix and Turner's dramatic landscapes. By mid-century, the Realist movement brought a new aesthetic honesty, but it was the Impressionists who revolutionized fashion most profoundly. Monet, Renoir, and their circle didn't just paint fashionable Parisians. They actively shaped what fashionable meant. The relationship was symbiotic and deliberate. Impressionist painters like Manet came from wealthy families with direct connections to the fashion industry. Renoir's father was a tailor, his mother a dressmaker, and they collected women's fashions specifically to dress their models in the latest styles. When new aniline chemical dyes emerged in the 18s, creating vibrant synthetic pigments like cerulean blue and brilliant greens, painters immediately incorporated these shocking new colors into their canvases, and fashionable women demanded fabrics in the same electric hues. James Tissot's paintings were so meticulously detailed in capturing every ruffle, pleat, and trim that critics declared his work would serve as archaeological evidence for future generations studying 19th century dress. The Impressionist obsession with light fundamentally changed how people thought about clothing color. White became the epitome of Impressionist dress. Novelist Émile Zola compared it to the brilliance of light itself, and bleached linen techniques allowed women to achieve an almost ethereal glow that mimicked the luminous quality of Impressionist paintings. But the movement went beyond just white. Impressionist artists rejected the traditional use of black and gray for shadows, instead painting them in blues, purples, and complementary colors. And this revolutionary approach to color theory directly influenced textile design. Stripes became wildly fashionable in the mid-1800s, immortalized in Monet's painting of his wife Camille in an emerald green and black striped dress. The painting wasn't meant as a formal portrait, but as a celebration of contemporary Parisian style. The transformation of Paris itself fueled this art-fashion fusion. Baron Haussmann's massive renovation of the city in the 1880s created wide, tree-lined boulevards that became stages for public display, and the rise of department stores like Printemps made ready-to-wear fashion accessible to the middle class for the first time. Fashion magazines proliferated, often including patterns so women could purchase fabric and create their own versions of the gowns they saw in paintings. The Impressionists captured this modern urban lifestyle obsessively. The cafes, the cabarets, the promenades, and in doing so, they created a feedback loop where art influenced fashion and fashion influenced art. Earlier in the century, Romanticism had already demonstrated art's power over dress. The movement rejected neoclassicism's pale, monochromatic palette and geometric simplicity in favor of color, pattern, and historical fantasy. Romantic painters drew inspiration from medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque periods, and in fashion followed suit with an eclectic mix of historical elements. 16th century slashing, Spanish ruffs, Van Dyked edges, and Marie sleeves banded at intervals to create romantic puffs. The Wadsworth Athenaeum's groundbreaking exhibition Gothic to Goth traced how Romantic-era fashion between 1810 and 1860 was directly shaped by the same imagination and emotion that drove Romantic painting, and how those aesthetic principles continue to influence fashion today. By the 1870s and 1880s, the relationship between painting and fashion had become so intertwined that it was impossible to separate them. The bustle silhouette that replaced the cage crinoline was documented in exquisite detail by painters like Tissot, who recorded every shift in the fashionable form, as skirt volume moved from the sides to the back, then up and out, then down again. The princess seam and cuirass bodice that dramatically narrowed the female silhouette in the late 1870s appeared simultaneously in paintings and on Paris streets. When you examine a Renoir portrait from 1808, you're not just looking at art, you're looking at a fashion plate, a historical document, and evidence of how deeply art movements shaped the very fabric of 19th century life. The painters didn't just observe fashion, they were fashion's architects, and their canvases became blueprints for how